بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه وبعد. Today's session, Ikhwan, with the nearness of Ramadan, we saw that it would be a good idea to work through a small text around some of the ahkam connected to Siyam. And one of the nice small texts that are utilized, or that is utilized by the people of Hadith and by the scholars of Hadith, is a book of Imam al-Shawkani rahimahullāh ta'ala, the small book in Masail Fiqhiyah, the book that he entitled ad-Durar al-Bahiyyah. Ad-Durar al-Bahiyyah, which may be translated as Radiant Pearls, is a book that he authored around the Masail al-Fiqhiyah, that is, issues connected to fiqh of the Kitab and the Sunnah. And we've mentioned previously the fact that the authorships in fiqh differed from scholar to scholar. That is to say, from them were those who authored around fiqh of hadith, yani that they gathered the ahadith al-ahkam and ordered them in abwab fiqhiyah, ordered them on the chapter headings that you, I'm sure, are familiar with: tahara, salah, siyam, and so on, and then gathered the ahadith that revolve around those topics. And then the other type of authorship in fiqh is the fiqh wherein the author, he gathers masail, that is, he gathers issues within those chapters. And so the arrangement of the chapters is ordinarily one and the same or very similar from book to book, but that which is present within those books is the mention of issues, without sometimes, if as is the case with some of the smaller texts, without the mention of the evidence even. Sometimes the alim may explain his book. Sometimes it could be a summary of a bigger book that he has written. And so you'll have some authorships, like ad-Durar, al-Imam al-Shawkani, he wrote it mentioning the khulasa, or mentioning the summarized version of the issues that he's concluded, and then he wrote himself an explanation. His explanation, which he entitled ad-Durar al-Madiyya, and likewise al-Imam Sadiq Hasan Khan, who wrote al-Rawda al-Nadiyya, both of them being explanations of ad-Durar al-Bahiyyah. So Durar was the asl, and then the explanation came afterwards. Durar was the original text, the explanation came afterwards. In some cases, the scholars work backwards, that is, they write a bigger book and then write a summary of that book, which turns out to be that small text, as is the case, for example, with the likes of Zad al-Mustaqni', which is a summary of a summary of a summary of al-Mughni, then al-Muqni', and then slowly but surely, progressively, the text became smaller until it became a conclusion of that which is in the huge compendium al-Mughni of al-Imam ibn Qudama. And so the scholars, when they author these small texts, they are one of two things. They either author them aslan and then explain them later, or they are summaries of larger books that they themselves had written, or another alim within the madhab has written, and then he decided to summarize that which is present within that bigger book. And so in terms of evidences and what have you, they won't be mentioned here. And that is ordinarily the case with the very small text, that they don't mention the evidences, because not that they intend to give you a text for you to blind follow, but because of the fact that the intent behind the book is that it is something that is summarized for the talib ilm, for the student of knowledge, to learn, to study, to understand, and then as he develops in knowledge, he increases in the knowledge of the evidences that are related to those issues. So the evidences are present, but in terms of the authorship, then the author intended by way of it to bring a summarized version of what is present within those bigger books. So what we want to look at then, and we hopefully will discuss from the beginning of Kitab Siyam, the book of fasting, to the section around Siyam at-Tatawwu', or the supererogatory fast. So we want to try and look at that in today's session. And the Imam, he begins with a Kitab al-Sadis, or the sixth book within the books that are present within ad-Durar al-Bahiyyah, and that is Kitab al-Sawm. He mentions rahimahullāh ta'ala al-Bab al-Awwal Ahkam al-Siyam. The first chapter then, Ahkam al-Siyam, or the rulings related to Siyam. He said al-Fasl al-Awwal, the first section, Wujub Sawmi Ramadan. The first section then he discusses that which is related to the wujub, or the wajib nature, the compulsory nature of fasting the month of Ramadan. And as we go along, you'll see the manner in which it is authored, very concise and simple. He mentions يجب صيام رمضان لرؤية هلاله من عدل أو إكمال عدة شعبان. He said first and foremost that Ramadan is compulsory, يعني fasting in Ramadan is compulsory, that is لرؤية هلاله, first and foremost based upon number one, رؤية هلاله. So he mentions firstly then that which is related to fasting being compulsory and what it is based upon. The first thing he mentions is based upon seeing the moon or the crescent of Ramadan. So that is the first reason that fasting becomes compulsory. Of course, fasting is compulsory upon the one who is Muslim, who is aqil, who is of sound mind, who has reached the age of bulugh and who has come of age. These are from the conditions that relate to the acts of worship generally. And the scholars will mention that in some of those books, some of them they won't be mentioned, as is the case here. He doesn't mention that which is related to the conditions of taklif. When do the ahkam and the rulings become binding upon an individual? Number one, when he comes of age, if he is of sound mind, and so on. They mention these conditions, and that is the case with all of the acts of worship. And so since that is the case with all of the acts of worship, you'll find that in these chapters they won't repeat the mention of them. Some of the books will, but generally they won't repeat the mention of them because they are issues that should be known by the student of knowledge. Therefore he mentions يجب صيام رمضان. It is wajib, the fast of Ramadan is wajib. Firstly, لرؤية هلاله, that a person sees the hilal of Ramadan, that a person sees the crescent of Ramadan. As far as it being wajib, then it is wajib first and foremost based upon the likes of the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان فمن شهد منكم الشهر فليصمه. Here Allah Azza wa Jal mentions the month of Ramadan in which the Quran was revealed as a guidance for the people and a clarification of the guidance and the criterion. And then Allah Azza wa Jal mentions فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْهُ. Whomsoever from among you witnesses the month, then Allah Azza wa Jal mentions فَلْيَصُمْهُ, then let him fast it. Here we have what is known as the fi'l al-mudari al-muqtarin bilam al-amr. That is the present tense verb that is coupled with the lam of command. Allah mentions fal yasumhu, and what is meant by that is then let him fast it. Allah Azza wa Jal is commanding that it be fasted. And there is a principle in the science of usul al-fiqh that the command, when it comes from Allah Azza wa Jal or His Messenger, then the thing being commanded is compulsory. When Allah Azza wa Jal commands us with a thing, unless we have evidences proving otherwise, other sets of evidences, whenever we have a text that has in it a command from Allah or a command from the Messenger of Allah, then the origin is that that thing is wajib. So whenever the Messenger says you must do, or Allah Azza wa Jal says do such and such, then those things that we're commanded with are wajib unless we have evidence to prove otherwise. Here Allah Azza wa Jal mentions فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْهُ. Whomsoever from among you witnesses the month, then let him fast it. And with that, fasting in Ramadan becomes wajib upon every single able-bodied Muslim. He mentioned لِرُؤْيَةِ هِلَالِهِ, it becomes wajib when a person witnesses the hilal. And so the command to fast is upon everyone. What is the alama, or what is the sign that it is now time to fast? When the month of Ramadan, that is the crescent of Ramadan, is witnessed. And it is sufficient that the crescent of Ramadan is witnessed by one individual. In that regard, we have the hadith of Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, that is in the Sunan of Imam Abu Dawood and others, wherein Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, he said that the crescent of Ramadan was observed by the people. The crescent of Ramadan was observed by the people. He said, فَأَخْبَرْتُ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صلى الله عليه وسلم أَنِّي قَدْ رَأَيْتُهُ. So I informed the Messenger of Allah that I saw it. Yani Abdullah ibn Umar, he informed the Messenger of Allah that he saw it. And so Abdullah ibn Umar, he said, فَأَمَرَ النَّاسِ. And so the Prophet ﷺ commanded the people. And so here, if we observe what is present, number one, the people saw the crescent, number one. But as it relates to that which occurred between Abdullah ibn Umar and the Prophet ﷺ, then Abdullah ibn Umar was one individual who went to the Messenger of Allah ﷺ. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he said, فَأَمَرَ النَّاسِ بِصِيَامِهِ. So based upon the information that reached the Messenger from Abdullah ibn Umar, the Prophet ﷺ commanded the people that they should fast. And so he mentions here, لِرُؤْيَةِ هِلَالِهِ مِنْ عَدْلٍ. That is that the crescent is observed by one who is adl, yani one who is upright, upright and a righteous witness. And so that is the first sign of the fast of Ramadan being wajib upon us, yani that the crescent of the month is observed or witnessed. He mentioned, ikmali iddati Sha'ban, or that the days of Sha'ban are completed. That is, the 30-day month of Sha'ban, which is the month before Ramadan, that the 30 days are completed. So if the crescent is not observed, but 30 days of Sha'ban are complete, then tomorrow we fast Ramadan. Tomorrow Ramadan begins. Now, and that, of course, is based upon another hadith, hadith of Abi Hurairah, when the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned, صُومُوا لِرُؤْيَتِهِ وَأَفْطِرُوا لِرُؤْيَتِهِ. Prophet ﷺ, he said, fast when you see it and break your fast when you see it. That is, fast when you see the crescent for the beginning of the month of Ramadan. And break your fast, yani end your fasting of the month of Ramadan when you see the crescent. That is the crescent of the following month, the month of Shawwal. And so here the beginning of the month of Ramadan and the end of the month of Ramadan, the Prophet ﷺ returned it back to ru'ya. He returned it back to sighting, when you see it. And this is one of the characteristics of the ahkam and the rulings of the sharia, that Allah Azza wa Jal has given us a sharia that is an easy sharia, that can be acted upon by any individual. A man in the middle of the desert, he can act upon this sharia. He only has to look with his senses. He looks at the sky, he observes Dhuhr, he observes Asr, he observes Maghrib, he observes Isha, he observes Fajr. As it relates to fasting, then he looks at the sky, he observes the crescent, and he now knows that it is time to fast. So Allah Azza wa Jal has connected these rulings to things that are easily observed or easily perceived by any individual, literate or illiterate. As long as it is observed by that individual, then the fasting is wajib upon him. And the Prophet ﷺ then said, فَإِنْ غُمِيَ عَلَيْكُمْ فَأَكْمِلُوا عِدَّةَ شَعْبَانَ 30. فَإِنْ غُمِيَ عَلَيْكُمْ فَأَكْمِلُوا عِدَّةَ شَعْبَانَ 30. He said, but if it is غُمِيَ عَلَيْكُمْ, that is, if your sighting of the moon is obscure, yani مثلا it is cloudy, the period is a cloudy period, you're not able to see the moon, then complete the month of Sha'ban, the month before 30 days. And that way, yani we know that Ramadan has entered upon us. Now, and so it is either wajib on the basis of sighting, or it is wajib on the basis of the completion of 30 days of the previous month, yani the month of Sha'ban. He said, وَيَصُومُ 30 يَوْمًا مَا لَمْ يَظْهَرْ هِلَالَ شَوَالٍ قَبْلَ إِكْمَالِهَا. He said, and one fast for 30 days as long as the moon or the crescent of Shawwal, which is the month after Ramadan, as long as the moon of Shawwal has not been seen before its completion. Which is to say, that it may possibly be that Ramadan is 29 days and then the moon of Shawwal is seen. The moon of the following month is seen. If the moon of the following month is seen, we do not say, Ramadan is 30 days and we must complete. La. Ramadan is now over. Ramadan has now ended. Therefore, it is possible that the Ramadan or the month of Ramadan may be 29 days based upon the sighting of the moon of Shawwal before the completion of 30 days. He said, وَإِذَا رَآهُ, and here is, ikhwan, an issue that is an age-old mushkila every Ramadan. وَإِذَا رَآهُ أَهْلُ بَلَدٍ لَزِمَ سَائِرَ الْبِلَادَ الْمُوَافَقَةِ. If it is observed by the people of one land, then it is compulsory upon the other lands to conform with them. Every Ramadan, as you know, we have the mushkila and the issue of are we fasting with such and such a place that have observed the moon, or do we work with the local sighting? It is an issue, ikhwan, of difference of opinion among the scholars, and not just now, but it is something that has been an issue of difference of opinion even among the scholars of old. But of course we have an extra element to our problem, and that is the calculated sightings or the calculations of the beginning of Ramadan. And that is an extra issue, ikhwan, that wasn't present in the earlier periods when our scholars were discussing these issues. These issues ordinarily revolved around local sighting or international sighting. Naam, that was the case. As far as the affair, though, of this statement, then the statement of al-Imam ash-Shawkani does have evidence. Yani, and being acquainted and familiar with these evidences will help us, ikhwan, when these issues come around each year. In relation to the evidence, and we have the hadith of al-Fadl bint al-Harith, who, in relation to that which is connected to Ramadan, Qurayb, he mentioned that al-Fadl bint al-Harith بعثته إلى معاوية بالشام. This was after the death of the Prophet ﷺ. That al-Fadl sent him to Muawiyah, who was in Sham, رضي الله عنه وأرضاه. قال فقدمت الشام. He said, so I came to Sham. I approached Sham. I arrived at Sham. فقضيت حاجتها. And so I took care of that which she had sent me to take care of. Yani because she had sent him upon a particular mission to take care of that and to return. He said, so I got to Sham and I took care of her needs. وَاسْتُحِلَّ عَلَيَّ رَمَضَانَ. And then the hilal, or the crescent of Ramadan, appeared upon me, upon us. وَأَنَا بِالشَّامِ. And at that time I was in Sham. And of course, if you're familiar with the Arabian Peninsula, then Sham is in the north of Saudi Arabia, and then we have Medina, Mecca, and down to Yemen. Now, he said, so the month of Ramadan came upon us and I was in Sham. فَرَأَيْتُ الْهِلَالَ لَيْلَةَ الْجُمُعَةِ. Pay attention, ikhwan, to the hadith. He said, I saw the moon on the night of Jumu'ah. The moon was spotted on the night of Jumu'ah. He said, ثُمَّ قَدِمْتُ الْمَدِينَةِ فِي آخِرِ الشَّهْرِ. He said, then I returned to Medina at the end of the month. فسألني عبد الله بن عباس رضي الله عنه ثم ذكر الهلال فقال متى رأيتم الهلال. He said, so Abdullah ibn Abbas, he asked me concerning that, and he asked me and questioned me, when did you see the moon? And so he said, رأينا ليلة الجمعة. He said, we saw it on the night of Jumu'ah. And what is intended by the night of Jumu'ah is the Maghrib before Jumu'ah. The Maghrib before Jumu'ah, not the night after Jumu'ah, or after the day of Jumu'ah, since the night is before the day. Islamically, the night comes before the day. He said, so we saw it ليلة الجمعة. He said, قال أنت رأيته. He said, you saw it. So this is Abdullah ibn Abbas and Abdullah and Afwan and Qurayb. He said, أنت رأيته? You saw it? قال نعم. He said, yes. He said, ورآه الناس, and the people saw it. He said, وصام معاوية. He said, and the people, they all fasted, including Muawiyah. He mentioned, فقال لكن رأيناه ليلة السبت. He said, but we saw it on Saturday, yani the following day, the day after, and that was in Medina. He said, فلا نزال نصوم حتى نكمل 30 أو نراه. He said, so we will not continue, we will not cease fasting until we complete 30 or we see the moon again, yani for the following month. فقلت, and of course, ikhwan, that which is apparently present here is an indication of working with the local sighting. Now, فقلت أولا تكفي برؤية معاوية وصيامه. He said, will you not suffice with the ru'ya of Muawiyah? Will you not suffice with what was seen by Muawiyah? فقال لا. He said, no. هكذا أمرنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. This is what the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم commanded us with. Of course, ikhwan, this is an issue as it relates to the issue of observing the moon. Since what is apparent here, what is apparently being indicated here is that you work with a local sighting. The evidence that Ahl al-Ilm utilize to work with the international sighting of any Muslim is the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, "Sumu li ru'yatihi," that he fast when it is seen. And in some narrations, fast when you see it, plural. And so you is a reference to Muslimin. Here, Shaykh al-Albani, rahimahullāh ta'ala, when he mentions the hadith, in Tamam al-Minna, he discusses that which is present within the hadith. And he says, إن حديث ابن عباس ورد في من صام على رؤية بلده ثم بلغه في أثناء رمضان أنهم رأوا الهلال في بلد آخر قبله بيوم، ففي هذه الحالة يستمر في الصيام مع أهل بلده حتى يكملوا 30 أو يروا هلالهم. He said, clarifying how we understand this text, he said this hadith, the qissa and the story with Ibn Abbas, this is in relation to the one who observes Ramadan in his month, in his land, and then he said, ثم بلغه في أثناء رمضان. Then in the middle and in the duration of Ramadan, it reaches him that it was spotted a day earlier in another place. So they are in the middle of Ramadan now. They have begun fasting. And then he hears that they observed it a day earlier in another place. In this circumstance, then you work with that which you've begun. Yani you work with the days that you've begun. You either complete 30 or you fast until you see the moon. The issue that we have is that the moon is sighted by one land before the lands have started fasting. And so it is a different mas'ala. So people misunderstand how this hadith is to be implemented. If we've begun fasting, we're in the middle of Ramadan, and then we hear that another land has spotted the moon a day earlier, na'am, we continue to fast based upon what we started. But if it is that the dispute is around the beginning of Ramadan, and it reaches us that one set of Muslimun have observed the moon, it has been spotted and sighted with an established, verified sighting, then the hadith of the Messenger ﷺ, "Sumu li ru'yatihi wa aftiru li ru'yatihi," comes into play. He said, as is Shaykh al-Albani, وَبِذَلِكَ يَزُولُ الْإِشْكَالِ. He said, with that, the ishkal is removed. Yani the ambiguity is removed. ويبقى حديث أبي هريرة وغيره على عمومه. He said, and therefore the hadith of Abu Hurairah and other than him remain upon their generality. يعني fast when you will see it and break your fast. يعني end Ramadan when you will see it. He mentions ويشمل كل من بلغه رؤية الهلال من أي بلد أو إقليم من غير تحديد مسافة أصلا كما قال شيخ الإسلام ابن تيمية رحمه الله تعالى في الفتاوى volume 25 107. He said, and so it remains that any Muslim that observes the moon in any land or any continent, then regardless of the distance between them, من غير تحديد مسافة, he said without a regulation upon the distance, then if it is observed by any Muslim, then one fasts regardless of the land that they are in, as Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah has mentioned in volume 25 of Majmu' al-Fatawa, page 107. And so the origin therefore is that we work with the sighting of any of the Muslim Ikhwan wherever they are, as long as that sighting is established. Now, Imam ash-Shawkani rahimahullāh ta'ala, he continues, what إذا انتهت 29 فهو رمضانهم شهرهم خلاص الشوال يعني. اوه لا 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 ما يمكن ما يمكن ما ايه
بعدين هم انتهوا 29 يوم
ايه
يوم 30
ايه
او شوال
ايه
ونحن يوم 30 عندهم
ايه نكمل يوم اما 39 او 30 عفوا 29 او 30. نعم فنكمل اليوم. That is, if it is that it occurs that they spot it on the 28th day, then in a circumstance like that we complete at least 29 days. And so we work here with what we began, and we complete either 29 days or 30 days if it isn't spotted. Now, he mentions rahimahullah ta'ala وعلى الصائم النية قبل الفجر. Here is another mas'ala, and that is the niyyah for the fast of Ramadan. The issue of the niyyah for the fast of Ramadan revolves, ikhwan, around a hadith, the hadith of Hafsa, the wife of the Messenger of Allah, al-Mu'mineen, who said, he said, "Man lam yujmi' as-sawm," or as occurs in some riwayat, "Man lam yubayyit as-sawm qabla al-fajr fala siyama lahu." Whomsoever does not have the intent to fast before Fajr, then he has no fast. An issue, again, that the scholars discuss in relation to the affair of the niyyah. What is intended here by the niyyah, or having the niyyah to fast before Fajr? And does it require that a person has a niyyah to fast every night of Ramadan? Or is it sufficient that he has the intent to fast before Ramadan comes in for the whole of Ramadan? From the people of knowledge are those who hold that he must have the niyyah before each night of Ramadan, and from them, like Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah, are those who hold the permissibility of him having the niyyah before the month of Ramadan. Because in essence, the one who knows that Ramadan is approaching, what is the niyyah that he will have? Is the niyyah that he will have that I'm going to fast a day and see how it goes, or fast a few days and see how it goes? His niyyah is Ramadan is coming and I'm going to fast every day in Ramadan. And so he has the niyyah to fast every night of Ramadan, before the Fajr of every night in Ramadan, before Ramadan even begins. When he rises each night for suhoor, does it require now that he now has to concentrate and make a niyyah? Or is his niyyah present? His niyyah is present from the time that he wakes to go and make suhoor, in order to fast, then his niyyah is present. If, mathalan, he rises and misses suhoor, and fasting has begun, what is the case in relation to the one who holds that he must have had the niyyah prior to Fajr? Yani, does he repeat the siyam? Is his fasting null and void because he slept past suhoor? And thus the position, ayyuhal ikhwah, of those scholars who hold that it is sufficient that a person has the niyyah to fast the whole of Ramadan before Ramadan, then that position no doubt encompasses the one who happens to sleep past Fajr on a particular day. He rises, he already had the intent to fast every day in Ramadan, and thus the niyyah was present prior to the action. And so he rises and he continues to fast. Except in one circumstance, and that is if he breaks his fast for a reason. And so he was sick in the middle of Ramadan, for example, or he journeyed in the middle of Ramadan and he wasn't fasting. When he returns to fasting, no doubt he has the niyyah to begin fasting on such and such a day when he's able to continue fasting. But as a general rule, the fast or the niyyah for the fast of Ramadan, it occurs every night when a person makes suhoor without him conscientiously having to think about making a niyyah and concentrating upon making a niyyah. Him rising to prepare suhoor is the niyyah to fast. And as we've mentioned in previous occasions, there is never an instance when the niyyah is uttered verbally. The niyyah is always in the heart. And the niyyah is present, ikhwan, with the person preparing for that action. And so, mathalan, the niyyah to perform Salatul Fajr or Salatul Dhuhr, it begins when that person rises to make wudu to go and make Fajr, or rises to make wudu to make Dhuhr. The niyyah is present with him. Why is he making the wudu? Except that he has intended to make Salah. Why does he take the suhoor? Except that he's intended to fast. And so the niyyah is present before Fajr in any case. He mentions, rahimahullāh ta'ala, al-faslu al-thani mubtilātu as-sawm. The second section, the things that break the fast. The things that break the fast. He said, وَيُبْتِلُ بِالْأَكْلِ وَالشِّرْبِ. He said that the sawm or the fasting is broken by eating or drinking. And that is indicated by a number of ahadith. What we mentioned from them, the hadith of Abi Hurairah radiallahu anhu, the statement of the Prophet sallallahu إِذَا نَسِيَ أَحَدُكُمْ فَشَرِبَ أَوْ أَكَلْ فَلْيُتِمَّ صَوْمَهُ. The Prophet sallallahu he said that if one of you is fasting and he forgets, and so he eats and he drinks, then let him complete his fast. The statement of the Prophet ﷺ here indicates clearly that eating or drinking is prohibited during the fast. Because the Prophet ﷺ here is mentioning, if he forgets and he eats and drinks, فَلْيُتِمَّ صَوْمَهُ فَإِنَّمَا أَطْعَمَهُ اللَّهُ وَسَقَاهُ. For indeed it is Allah Azza wa Jal who has given him to drink or has given him to eat. And so the opposite understanding of that, or what is understood from that, is that eating and drinking is not permissible during the fast of Ramadan. And so he mentions that it is nullified by eating or drinking. But of course he's overlooked if he forgets. Now he mentions wal jima, and likewise having sexual relations. In relation to the affair of sexual relations, it should be known there is a kafara that is mughallada, or there is a heavy kafara or heavy expiation for the one who breaks his fast with and by way of sexual relations. It is not just a case of making that day up. There is a heavy expiation, and that is present in the hadith of Abi Hurairah, wherein the Prophet ﷺ, or Abu Hurairah, he informs us, بينما نحن جلوس عند النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إذ جاء رجل فقال يا رسول الله هلكت. He said, verily we were sitting with the Prophet ﷺ on an occasion when a man came and said, O Messenger of Allah, I am destroyed. And so the Prophet ﷺ said, Malak. The Prophet ﷺ said, what is wrong? He said, وَقَعْتُ عَلَى إِمْرَأَتِي فِي رَمَضَانِ أو وَأَنَا صَائِمٌ. He said, I had relations with my wife while I was fasting. So the Prophet ﷺ, he turned to him and said, هل تجد رقبة تعتقها? He said, do you have a slave that you are able to free? And so the man said, لا. He said, no. He said, فهل تستطيع أن تصوم شهرين متتابعين? He said, so are you able to fast for 2 consecutive months? And so the man said, لا. He said, no. He said, فهل تجد إطعام 60 مسكينا? He said, then are you able to fast, to feed 60 poor people? And so the man, he said, no. And so here we have 3 affairs. Number 1, that which is related to freeing a slave. Number 2, that which is related to fasting 2 consecutive months. Number 3, that which is related to feeding 60 poor people. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he continues, فمكث النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وبينا نحن على ذلك أتي النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بعرق فيها تمر فقال أين السائل? He said, we were in that, or we continued to sit, and so then the Prophet ﷺ was brought a araq, which is like a container, like a skin, or a vessel, like a bag, that was filled with dates. And so he said, where is the questioner? And so the man said, Ana, here I am, O Messenger of Allah. And so he said, خُذْ هَذَا فَتَصَدَّقْ بِهِ. He said, take this and give it in charity. And so the man said, أَلَا أَفْقَرَ مِنِّي يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. He said, upon poorer than me, O Messenger of Allah. Yani, does this charity have to be given to someone poorer than me? He said, فوالله ما بين لابتيها يريد يعني الحرتين ما بين لابتيها أهل بيت أفقر من أهل بيتي. He said, because by Allah there is not between the 2 areas of volcanic rock, the harratain or the labatain are the peripheries of Medina, and on both sides of Medina there are areas of volcanic rock. He said, by Allah, there is no one between these boundaries of Medina that is poorer than me, and no family that is poorer than me. And so the Prophet ﷺ, فضحك النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم حتى بدت أنيابه ثم قال أطعمه أهلك. And so the Prophet ﷺ laughed until his molar teeth could be seen, and so he said, then give it to your family, feed your family with it. Now, and so that which is present within the hadith is the fact that the one who has relations during the day of Ramadan, his expiation is not merely to make that day up. Rather, the expiation is one that is heavy. It is either to free a slave, or it is to feed, or it is to fast for 2 consecutive months. And one doesn't choose from them. Yani they are, as the scholars mentioned, bit-tartib. They are in this order. Firstly, that he frees a slave. If he's not able, then that he fasts for 2 consecutive months. If he's not able, then he feeds 60 poor people. Now, he mentions وَالْقَيْ عَمْدًا. Similarly, that a person vomits intentionally. And a person may say, well, why would you want to vomit intentionally? There is nothing exquisite or enjoyable about vomiting intentionally. Yani, whatever the case, it is mentioned in every single one of the books of the fuqaha, so it seems to have been a thing at some stage. But in any case, if a person does so intentionally because of the fact that it is Ramadan and he wants some vomit in his mouth, then if he does so, he breaks his fast intentionally. But if a person vomits uncontrollably, in that case he doesn't break his fast. In that regard, we have the hadith of Abi Hurairah radiallahu anhu, when the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned, من ذرعه قيء وهو صائم فليس عليه قضاء وإن استقى فَلْيَقْضِي. He mentions that whomsoever is overcome by vomit, yani overcome and is unable to control it and he vomits, then there is no qada upon him, and he doesn't have to make his fast up. But whomsoever makes himself vomit, then he must make that fast up. Now, he mentions وَيَحْرُمُ الْوِصَالِ. He said al-wisal is haram. That is the origin in relation to al-wisal. Al-wisal, ikhwan, is a reference to continuing the fast after Maghrib. And so it was something that was done, and you may find in some of the biographies of some of the Salaf that they used to practice wisal. So they would fast, and they would continue to fast until just before Fajr, mathalan. Or that they would continue to fast until after Isha. Now, in that regard, the Prophet ﷺ, when the companions, they copied the Messenger ﷺ, since he used to practice wisal. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he prohibited them from al-wisal. And so they approached the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, saying, وَإِنَّكَ تُوَاصِلْ. But you, O Messenger of Allah, you practice wisal. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he responded to them by saying, إِنِّي لَسْتُ كَهَيْئَتِكُمْ إِنَّمَا يُطْعِمُنِي اللَّهُ وَيُسْقِينِي. He said that indeed I am not like you. Verily I am fed by Allah and He gives me to drink. So the Prophet ﷺ, na'am, he practiced wisal, but Allah Azza wa Jal nourished him. And how that occurred, Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. So the Prophet ﷺ prohibited them from it, though he himself practiced al-wisal. And in some versions of the hadith, Prophet ﷺ said that if you must, then ila sahar. If you must, then ila sahar. If you must practice wisal, then only until the last third of the night. You can't continue, for example, to fast for 2 consecutive days, mathalan. At the most, you must break your fast and eat before Fajr comes in the following day. That is, with those who hold it to be permissible. It is an issue of discussion among the people of knowledge, and is it permissible or not? Does that hadith make it permissible? Or was Prophet ﷺ saying, if it were permissible, then it would only be permissible until as-sahar? And it is a discussion among the people of knowledge. In any case, al-Imam ash-Shawkani here, he holds that it is haram. وَيَحْرُمُ الْوِصَالِ وَعَلَى مَنْ أَفْطَرَ عَمْدًا كَفَارَةٌ كَكَفَارَةِ الظِّهَارِ. Here he mentions, for the one who aftara amdan, the one who breaks his fast intentionally, then he must perform the expiation, like the expiation of al-Dhihar. And the expiation of al-Dhihar, which is that a person says to his wife, you are to me like the back of my mother. If he intends to go back to his wife, he must either free a slave, or that he fast for 2 consecutive months, or that he feeds 60 poor people, which is similar to the expiation that was present in the hadith that we previously mentioned. What should be mentioned here is that anyone who, other than al-jima', other than sexual relations, there is no evidence that the expiation for breaking a day's fast is the expiation of dhihar. And so, that which is upon that individual, which is the position of the majority of Ahlul Ilm, is that he makes tawbah to Allah Azza wa Jal, since he's carried out a major sin from the major sins, number 1, and number 2, that he makes that day up, that he fasts that day. That is the position of some, while others hold that he does not have the shari'i permission to make the day up, since al-qadha, since making an act of worship up is not done except with an evidence. As some of the scholars of usul, they mention, لا قضاء إلا بأمر جديد. There is no qadha except by way of a new text. That is, except by way of a text that permits you to make an action up. Otherwise, if you've missed the action, the only thing that is upon you is tawbah. That is, like for example the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, من نام عن الصلاة أو نسيها فوقتها حين ذكرها ليس لها وقت إلا ذلك. That whomsoever sleeps past a prayer or forgets it, then its time is when he remembers. Here the Prophet ﷺ mentioned the permissibility of him making qada if he sleeps or forgets. So here he has a text that permits and legislates him making that act of worship up. And so with the people of knowledge, and it is mentioned by Sheikh Muhammad Amin al-Shinqiti and al-Mudakkira, that the qada, there is no qada except by way of a text. And in the absence of a text, then a person does nothing but make tawbah. If he misses salah intentionally, there is nothing upon him but tawbah. If he misses a fast, then what is upon him is tawbah. But some of the people of knowledge, they mentioned that he should make that day up. And so you'll find both affairs in their statements, in relation to the one who misses a day. But he should know that it is a major sin, and he is under the threat of the punishment of Allah Azza wa Jal if he does not make tawbah. Now, he said, وَيُنْدَبْ تَعْجِيلَ الْفِطْرِ. He said, it is desirable to hasten breaking the fast, and that no doubt occurs in an authentic hadith that we will mention, وَتَأْخِيرَ السُّحُورِ, and delaying the suhoor. And so hastening to break the fast and delaying the suhoor is from the sunnah. As far as hastening to break the fast, then we have the hadith of Sahal ibn Sa'ad al-Sa'idi radiyallahu anhu, when the Prophet ﷺ, he said, لا يزال الناس بخير ما عجلوا الفطر, that the people will not cease to be upon good as long as they hasten to break their fast. And as far as the affair of delaying the suhoor, in the Prophet ﷺ, what is established is occurs in the hadith of Zayd ibn Thabit. The Prophet ﷺ, he used to delay his suhoor until just before Fajr. And so one of the companions, they asked, what was the distance or what was the time period between the adhan and the suhoor of the Prophet ﷺ? And he responded, 50 ayah. 50 ayah. That is, قدر 50 ayah, yani the amount of time that it takes to recite about 50 verses. And so the Prophet ﷺ would delay the suhoor until close to Fajr, which is, ikhwan, in contradiction to what we see now taking place. You'll find on many a timetable, an hour before Fajr, 2 hours before Fajr, this is the time of imsak. In order to be careful, we must make imsak because you never know. Well, the Prophet ﷺ, just before Fajr, ikhwan, the Prophet ﷺ continued to eat. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned that whomsoever is eating while the vessel is in his hand, then let him take his need from it. Which clearly indicates, ikhwan, that up until the adhan of Fajr is a time for eating and drinking. Now, there and after, ikhwan, there is a small section and we'll round up with this, and that is al-fasl al-thalith, the third section, qada al-sawm, making the fast up. يجب على من أفطر لعذر شرعي أن يقضي. And this is the position of Imam ash-Shawkani, that he holds here that it is wajib upon the one who أفطر لعذر شرعي. انتبه, لعذر شرعي, whoever breaks his fast based upon a shari'i permission, a shari'i allowance, a legislated allowance. And that, of course, is like the one who is sick, the one who is upon a journey, the woman who is ha'id, then it is upon them to make that day up. The woman who's on a menses, it's upon her to make that day up. The person who breaks his fast because of a journey, he must make that day up. And I'm sure you're familiar with the hadith, the narration of Mu'adha, who said that a woman came to Aisha radiallahu anha and said, ما بال الحائض تقضي الصوم ولا تقضي الصلاة. What is the issue with the ha'id, or the woman who's on her menses, not making up the prayer, but she makes up the fast. Aisha radiallahu anha, she responded by saying, Aharuriyatun anti? Are you Haruriya? And Haruriya is a reference to the Khawarij. And they were referred to as the Haruriya because of the fact that they appeared in a place called Harura, which is just outside of Kufa. That was where their mission and their da'wah appeared from and spread. And so they were referred to as the Haruriya. She said, are you a Haruri? Are you from the Haruriya? Are you Haruriya? And she said, لست بحرورية وإنما أسأل. Why did Aisha radiallahu anha ask her that? Because the Haruriya, they held that the woman the woman who is on her menses, that she must make her salah up. That was from their belief, which is contrary to the sunnah. And so when she said, why does he have to make up the fast and she doesn't make up the salah? Aisha radiallahu anha, she said, you Haruriya. Again, ikhwan, indicating, and here this is Aisha radiallahu anha, this alima from the ulama of the Sahaba, radiallahu anha wa ardaha, al-Mu'mineen. If someone were to say that in this time, you Haruri, they would say, Yakhi, subhanallah, this man has no hikmah, and there's no wisdom, and look at how she is, and so on. Aisha radiallahu anha, بكل صراحة, you Haruri. Why asking me that question? Nah. And so the issue then is that Aisha radiallahu anha, she went on to explain that that was what occurred during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we would make up the fast and we would not make up the prayer. Now, he mentions وَالْفِطْرُ لِلْمُسَافِرِ, and it is ويجب على من أفطر لعذر شرعي أن يقضي والفطر للمسافر ونحوه رخصة. He said to break the fast for the person who is on a journey and those who are similar to him, the person who is sick, for example, then to break the fast is a rukhsa, is a rukhsa, it is a permission. And of course, ikhwan, this affair of it being a rukhsa, or is it wajib? Is it a must that the person who's upon a journey breaks his fast? Or is it merely an allowance? What is most correct is that it is an allowance. As far as the statements of the Prophet ﷺ, لَيْسَ مِنَ الْبِرَّ الصَّوْمُ فِي السَّفَرِ, that it is not from righteousness to fast upon a journey, then that is in relation to the one who finds difficulty fasting upon the journey, but he continues to fast anyway. Here the Prophet ﷺ made the statement, لَيْسَ مِنَ الْبِرَّ الصَّوْمُ فِي السَّفَرِ. And in fact, the hadith is connected to the Prophet ﷺ seeing a man who the people were around and he was collapsing, Abu Israel, an individual known as Abu Israel. And so the Prophet ﷺ asked concerning him, and it was said that he vowed to fast while upon the journey and so on. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, لَيْسَ مِنَ الْبِرِّ الصَّوْمُ فِي السَّفَرِ. It is not from righteousness to fast while upon a journey. But we have the hadith of Abi Sa'id al-Khudri, radiallahu anhu, when he mentioned and others, or in the Prophet ﷺ, in the hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha, likewise, when they mention that Hamza ibn Amr al-Aslami radiallahu anhu, he said to the Prophet ﷺ, أَأَسُومُ فِي السَّفَرِ, should I fast upon the journey? And so the Prophet ﷺ, and this individual was kathir al-siyam, and he used to fast plentifully. Prophet ﷺ said to him, إِن شِئْتَ فَصُمْ وَإِن شِئْتَ فَأَفْطِرْ. If you wish, then fast, and if you wish, then don't fast. Which is, again, a clear indication of the fact that it is an option and an allowance for the person who's upon a journey. Now, he said, إِلَّا أَن يَخْشَ التَّلَفْ أَوْ الضَّعْفَ عَنِ الْقِتَالِ فَعَزِيمَةٌ. Except that a person believes that he may die, or that he believes that he will not have strength for fighting, that is, for fighting during warfare. In that case, it is azima, it is not a rukhsa, he must break his fast. It is not an allowance, he must break his fast. If he feels he's going to die, he's going to be harmed physically, he's going to die, he must break his fast. Or he is part of a battalion that is about to go to war, he must break his fast. In that regard, we have a narration, the hadith of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri in Sahih Muslim. Abu Sa'id, he mentions that the Prophet ﷺ, he said, إنكم قد دنوتم من عدوكم والفطر أقوى لكم. Prophet ﷺ, he said, when they were upon a journey, in one of the battles, the Prophet ﷺ said that verily you are coming close to your enemy, so breaking your fast is better for your strength. You are coming close to your enemy, therefore breaking your fast is better for your strength. He said, فَكَانَتْ رُخْصَةً, and so it was an allowance. Since the Prophet ﷺ just said, breaking it is better for you. Here, and pay attention, ikhwan, to the fact that we didn't have the command. There is no command here. The Prophet ﷺ just said, breaking it is better for your strength. Then the Prophet ﷺ, as Abu Sa'id informs us, فَمِنَّا مَنْ صَامَ وَمِنَّا مَنْ أَفْطَرَ. So from us were those who fasted, and from us were those who broke their fast. He said, ثُمَّ نَزَلْنَا مَنْزِلًا آخَرَ ثُمَّ نَزَلْنَا مَنْزِلًا آخَرَ فَقَالَ إِنَّكُمْ مُسَبِّحُونَ عَدُوِّكُمْ وَالْفِطْرُ أَقْوَى لَكُمْ فَافْطِرُوا. He said, then we stopped at another place. And the Prophet ﷺ said that verily in the morning you will meet your enemy, and breaking your fast is better for you, so break your fast. Sure, you see the difference here? The Prophet ﷺ said, so break your fast, which is a command. And so here, كانت عزيمة or كانت عزمة. And so it was an established command that each and every one of them had to fulfill. And so in some circumstances it may be optional, but based upon an evaluation of a particular situation, the head of the army, the head of the battalion may decide that all of their men or all of the battalion must break their fast. Regardless of how oft given to fasting that individual may be, when the Amir of the jihad makes that command, it is compulsory to break the fast if that is the case and if he so commands. Now, he mentions وَمَنْ مَاتَ وَعَلَيْهِ الصَّوْمِ صَامَ عَنْهُ وَلِيُّهُ. Whosoever passes away and fasting is due, or fasting is upon him, yani he had a fast to perform, either one of the fasts of Ramadan, mathalan he was upon a journey, then he died before he was able to make the fast stop, or he was sick in Ramadan, and then he died before he was able to make the fast stop, or mathalan he had the fast of another, he made an oath that he was going to fast based upon certain circumstances, and then he dies before he was able to carry it out. Sama anhu waliyuhu, his guardians fast on his behalf, and that is his heirs. Any those who will inherit from him, they will likewise make those fasts that he was not able to perform before he died. And that, no doubt, is based upon a hadith that carries the same meaning or is upon the same wording. The hadith of Aisha, Man mata wa alayhi sawm sama anhu waliyuhu. Whoever dies and there is fasting upon him, then his guardian fasts on his behalf. He mentions وَالْكَبِيرُ وَالْعَاجِزُ عَنِ الْأَدَاءِ وَالْقَضَاءِ يُكَفِّرُ عَنْ كُلِّ يَوْمٍ إِطْعَامِ مِسْكِينٍ أو بِإِطْعَامِ مِسْكِينٍ. He said, as far as the kabir, as far as the one who is elderly or unable to carry the fast out or to make it up, then, and that is possibly because of an illness, yani a person is terminally ill, there is an illness that he has, the scholars refer to as marad la yurja bur'uhu, yani a sickness that one does not expect to be cured from, then he's not able either to fast in Ramadan or even to make it up. In that case, he feeds a poor person per day. He feeds a poor person per day. That was the action, no doubt, of the Salaf of this Ummah. Anas ibn Malik, radiallahu anhu, at the end of Ramadan, when he was elderly, he would gather 30 poor people around a spread of food and he would feed them all at once. What should be mentioned though is that it is not, as Sheikh ibn Uthaymeen has mentioned, it is not permissible to feed before the day of fasting has come upon you. And so what some of the people do, and you may find it in the statements of some of the people of knowledge even, is that they pay for the fasting before Ramadan even begins, or at the beginning of Ramadan. They feed poor people. Or weeks before Ramadan, I've got a friend that's going to take a trip to trip back home, and so I'm going to give him some money to feed some poor people on behalf of my 30 days of Ramadan. It's not permissible, ikhwan. These rukhas, these allowances, become allowances when the day of the actual ibadah is present. Prior to the day of the ibadah, it is not binding upon an individual at all. And so the allowance would not be binding until the ibadah is binding. Therefore, when the allowance is a substitute for the actual act of worship, it is not to be performed until the day of the fast or after the day of the fast has passed. Now, and of course, ikhwan, we have the issue of the woman who is pregnant or breastfeeding, although the Imam didn't mention that in the book here, though it may be encompassed by the one who is ajiz or unable to fast for a particular reason. What is most correct in terms of the statements of the Salaf of this ummah, Abdullah ibn Abbas and others, is that the breastfeeding woman and the pregnant woman who fears for her child, whether because of her breast milk or that she's still pregnant, then she is able, or she has the allowance to break her fast, and the only thing that is upon her is that she makes the it'am, that she feeds a poor person per day. She feeds a poor person per day, and that occurs in the narration of Abdullah ibn Abbas when he mentioned in relation to the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمْ عَفْوًا كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ أَيَّامٌ مَعْدُودَاتٌ فمن كان منكم مريضا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام أخر وعلى الذين يطيقونه فدية طعام مسكين. That Allah Azza wa Jal mentions, in which was a period when fasting was not wajib, He mentions that it was prescribed upon you, just as it was prescribed upon those who came before you, that you may receive piety, a number of prescribed days. Whomsoever is sick or upon a journey, then he must fast a number of other days. And then those who are able to fast but choose not to, then they should feed a poor person. That was as what occurred in the beginning of Islam, and in the beginning of the legislation of fasting, that it was optional. If you wish to fast, you could. If you chose not to fast, then that was permissible for you, with the condition that you feed a poor person per day. That was then abrogated with the ayah, the month of Ramadan, in which the Quran was revealed. With the revelation of that verse, Ramadan became wajib upon every single individual. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, he said that verse, the option to fast if you want, or break your fast if you wish not to, that was abrogated. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, he said it was abrogated by Shahr Ramadan. But it remains, the ruling remained for the elderly, for the breastfeeding woman, and for the hubla, for the woman who is pregnant. The ruling remained for the elderly, for the breastfeeding woman, and for the woman who is pregnant. And that which is present within the verse is ta'amu miskin, that they feed a poor person. There is no mention of making the day up, making the fast up, or what have you. And so, with that, ikhwan, we come to the end of the three sections that we wish to discuss. After that, Imam ash-Shawkani enters into Babu Sawm at-Tatawwu', the chapter concerning the supererogatory fast, and perhaps, ikhwan, on another occasion we'll look at those chapters or those sections around the supererogatory fast, or around on this session. On that note, it just was intended to be a reminder about some of the ahkam related to fasting, والله تعالى أعلم وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. There are some narrations that permit him to break his fast before he leaves, and Sheikh Nasir authenticates some of those narrations. You may come across, though, the statement of some of the people of knowledge that he does not break his fast until he's actually upon the journey. In that, no doubt, is them being cautious in relation to the matter. But in terms of narrations, then there are narrations that permit a person to break the fast even before embarking upon the journey. So if a person wishes to walk the path of caution, then he doesn't break it until he embarks upon the journey. But no doubt, as we mentioned, there is the permission to do so prior to him leaving. Wallahu ta'ala. لا بعد أن أعطاه النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام ما أعطاه خلاص قضي الأمر. ما شاء الله. The man who had relations with his wife during Ramadan, there was nothing upon him, even if he were to later become wealthy. He's carried out the expiation, and so that's one of the reasons the Prophet ﷺ smiled. ضحك, because after everything, after the whole mishwar, it turned out that he even benefited from the whole affair. So that was no doubt, as far as it relates to him. The Prophet ﷺ didn't tell him, if you become wealthy ba'dain, then you must give. La. The Prophet ﷺ said, then take it and feed your family. And that was the end of the qadiyya. But what is taken from it, of course, is for the one who is able to free a slave, or to fast 2 consecutive months, or if he's not able to do so, to feed 60 poor people, then they must do one of those 3 in that order. And so it is not said that, fasting 2 months, and I just feed 60 poor people. It's not an option, ikhwan. You don't choose which of those we carry out. They are upon tartib, as the people of knowledge have mentioned. Prophet ﷺ asked him in a particular order. Started with one thing. When he was unable to fulfill that, he asked him the second affair. When he was unable to do that, he asked him the third affair. Now, then his consecutive months start from scratch. So again, our brother is asking, what if a person breaks a day of the fasting? As the people of knowledge have mentioned, he must begin his consecutive days from scratch. Is the 60 days or shahrain? Allah Azza wa Jal has mentioned shahraini mutatabi'ain. Shahraini mutatabi'ain, consecutively without breaking them. If he breaks one of those days, he begins from scratch. Of course, unless he has a legitimate excuse. If he believes and he knows he's not going to be able to do it, then he waits for the meeting with Allah Azza wa Jal. Yes.
In terms of the local sites and the international sites, is it due to the fact that back then they didn't have the communication, so they had to go around the local sites rather than international sites?
Well, no doubt the asl and the origin is that the news at that time would take a period to spread, and so the working with the sightings, as is the case in our time, a person sights it in any part of the globe within minutes across the dunya. Everyone is able to be informed of that, and that is sufficient. At that time, of course, for you to receive news of a sighting from another country, then unless you're on the border of another country and someone comes on horseback, for example, from that other country across the border, it is likely that it's going to take something of a period, which is exactly why, as Sheikh Nasir mentions, the affair in the hadith of Ibn Abbas was something that reached them later, and that was because of the fact that news would only reach them by way of people who came from particular countries. Now, but as far as the general statement of the Prophet ﷺ, then the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, fast when you see it. Sumu li ru'yatihi wa aftiru li ru'yatihi. Fast when it is seen, and in some narrations when you see it. And the scholars mention, the shurrah and the explainers of the hadith, and when you, the Muslimun, see it. So as long as a trustworthy, upright Muslim in any land sees the moon, then that is sufficient in establishing the fast. Allahu ta'ala. Based upon where he started, that's right. So with him, because he started in Sham, and then he works with the fast that he began. Or it completes 30. Or the moon is sighted, that's right. So masalan, if he in Medina saw the moon and it was 29 days, then he breaks his fast. If I mean, we have these types of statements being made regularly. That's right. The beauty with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is that they have a moon sighting lejna. They have a moon sighting committee of skilled moon sighters. Because sighting the new moon, ikhwan, is not like sighting. We oftentimes believe that the moon, the crescent that we see in our skies, that is the new moon. That is not the new moon. When we see a thin crescent, that's probably 4 or 5 days old. The new moon, ikhwan, is as thin as a hair. And it's a skill. You have to observe the horizon at a particular time, Maghrib time in a particular place. And so those who are skilled in observing that razor thin new moon, they establish themselves prior to Ramadan beginning. Their committee, they observe. They have the most that they'll use. Some of them may use binoculars, but generally they'll work with that which is seen with the naked eye. And the only thing that they would use the binoculars is to zoom in on exactly where it is, and then they'll observe it with the eye. But once it is spotted, the committee then informs the necessary departments, who will then convey the news to the rest of the kingdom, who they can then convey the news to the rest of the world. And so there is an established moon sighting committee in Saudi Arabia. I'm not too sure how the other countries work, if they have an established committee or if they are skilled in. I mean, inevitably there must be individuals in each country that have that skill. But the only issue is, and it's not something that I personally am aware of. And so the ability to spot it, as we mentioned, ikhwan, is not just as simple as looking into the sky and observing it as you would ordinarily see a full moon. There is a particular skill. But them saying it is not possible to have seen it on such and such time and so on, then that statement would return back, number one, to whether or not the committee have established that they saw it. On some occasions, because of cloud, the committee may not even have been able to see it. In which case they would ordinarily work with the days. But if they say they saw it, then know that they have seen it. Because that is all that committee is established for, to spot the moon. So if they say it was seen, then know that it was seen. Because you have a lot of individuals who have issues, of course, with Saudi Arabia. And so in every affair, including Ramadan. And so any way they have, or any means they have of dispraising and speaking ill of Saudi Arabia, they'll do so. They're just sinful, princes and rich oil merchants who don't care about deen anyway. And so, when they say that they spotted the moon, can you really trust them? And that is the attitude with a lot of people. And that is no doubt based upon jahl and ignorance with that which is taking place in the Mamlaka and in the kingdom. But as we mentioned, the committee that is established to spot the moon, Ikhwan, are a bona fide group of seasoned moon spotting veterans. And so when it is spotted, and when they say it is spotted, it has been spotted. Wallahu ta'ala alam. Salaamatullahi wa barakatuh. You got it there? I haven't come across it. Right. Wallahu ta'ala alam. I've never come across it as a hadith. If it is authentic, then Ramadan wouldn't be included in that, because the fast is not considered hunger in the absolute sense, since a person breaks his fast every day. And the hunger that would be referring to, if that was a hadith, but I've never come across it as a hadith, but the hunger that would be referring to is ongoing hunger, yani that a person is perpetually starving, and he has little to eat, he goes for a few days and eats morsels, he becomes slim, he becomes malnourished, and that would no doubt destroy the body. But as far as it being a hadith, then Allah knows best whether or not it is a hadith. I've never heard the hadith myself. 4 things that destroy the body: sorrow, sleeping late, excessive or sleeping late, Salaamatullahi wa barakatuh. Aywa. No. Yeah, staying up and going to sleep late, I believe. Yeah. If that is a hadith, I've never heard it as a hadith. That sounds, to be honest with you, more like a statement of Imam ibn al-Qayyim than a hadith. Wallahu ta'ala alam. But if it is a hadith, then it would be a reference to prolonged hunger and starvation, which fasting is not, because he breaks his fast and he eats every day, every night. It wouldn't be classed as hunger, no. It is a type of hunger, but it isn't hunger in a detrimental sense. Nah. Wallahu ta'ala.
Can be given to one person the whole amount? Can it be divided between just 2 people?
Permissible.
50-50.
Permissible, yeah.
Okay.
That's permissible. The feeding, you mean? Yeah, it's permissible.
You can give it the amount as rice or something like that.
Just a quick question, Niyyah. You mentioned that the Niyyah is not
Or pronounced.
so pronounced. Is that true of every action, every one?
With every single act of ibadah, there is no instance when the niyyah is pronounced, not even Hajj and Umrah. During Hajj and Umrah, the talbiyah that a person makes is not a pronouncement of the niyyah. it is part of the sha'ira and part of the act of performing Hajj or Umrah, but it is not a pronouncement of the niyyah. Yani, the niyyah precedes the talbiyah. Yani, when that person enters into his garments of ihram, and then he says labbaik Allahumma bi umrah or labbaik Allahumma hajjan, that statement is not a pronouncement of the niyyah, rather it is that which is prescribed at this point. At the time that the Prophet ﷺ would enter into, or was about to enter into his ihram, he would put his ihram on, he would make his niyyah, and then he would make his utterance at the miqat. And with that, yani, the ihram would begin. But it wasn't an utterance of the niyyah. So the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned, after explaining the mawaqit, that for the people of Yemen, Yalamlam, and for the people of Medina, Dhul Hulayfa, ila akhiri. At the end of that statement, he mentioned, هُنَّ لَهُمْ وَلِمَنْ أَتَى عَلَيْهِنْ مِنْ غَيْرِ أَهْلِهِنَّ مِمَّنْ أَرَادَ الْحَجَّ وَالْعُمْرَةِ. That he said that these places are for these people. وَلِمَنْ أَتَى عَلَيْهِنَّ مِنْ غَيْرِ أَهْلِهِنَّ. And for those people who passed these regions from other than the people of those places, مِمَّنْ أَرَادَ الْحَجَّ وَالْعُمْرَةِ. For those who intend Hajj and Umrah. Therefore, the one who did not embark upon that journey intending Hajj and Umrah, intended business for example, but then he's completed his business, is it now permissible for him to enter into ihram even though he's gone past the miqat? It is permissible. Since him having the ihram beforehand was not necessary, since he had not intended to make Hajj and Umrah yani in the outset, but now that he's finished his business, he's able to embark upon Hajj and Umrah. There's still time. It is permissible for him to go to the nearest hill, and then he enters into ihram from the nearest region outside of the haram. If he does so in Ramadan, then he receives the reward of Hajj, as is established in a hadith, and the hadith, in fact, it mentions the reward of making Hajj with the Prophet ﷺ. Now, so if he does so, even though his niyyah wasn't to make Umrah, then he's rewarded with the reward as an individual who had embarked upon the journey from his country with that intention. He would have to go to Tana'im, yeah. Barakallah.
A few days back we were praying Isha in Jama. We was at the last row. And we went down to the last rakah. We had one rakah left. So he said tasneem, salam alaikum and we didn't realize after that he was going to go down and do sajda soon. So it was just about timing. We got up. He says tasneem and he went down into the sajda. So we were standing in the back and some of us, we didn't know what to do. We stood up, so we didn't know whether to go back down and join him or just stay standing up and then finish our rakah from there. So in the middle of it, we just rushed back and joined the Imam. Was we right in doing that?
Correct. That's correct. Join him, finish, and then rise. Now.
Can you advise any nasiha for students that are doing their GCSEs this year? Ramadan.
شد حيلك بس. Just be diligent in your revision. Or during Ramadan. Or the exams during Ramadan. Shia. Allah يعينك. Allah Azza wa Jalla make it easy for you. Inshallah you shouldn't have any problems. Just make sure that you have a good suhoor. And just prepare yourself with a good suhoor. Drink well. Yani hydrate yourselves well. Make sure you drink well. And inshallah you'll be upon khair.
Diabetic people, are they exempt from fasting?
If fasting affects them, nah. If they're able to fast and there isn't a problem, then they'll fast as normal. But if people, for example, if they're diabetic and they have insulin, or the fasting just creates a problem for them, difficulty for them, then it's permissible for them to break their fast. And they would enter among those who have a marad la yurja buru'uhu, the sickness that they don't expect to be anytime soon cured from, even though it is curable. But the ordinary, the state of affairs is, it's ongoing. It's ongoing. Yeah, that they would feed poor people. But if they're able to fast, then they should fast. It isn't absolutely the case, ikhwan, that as soon as a person has the first signs of an illness, and this is another mistake that a lot of people make, first signs of an illness, that they automatically break the fast. So somebody has the sniffles, and khalas, is not fasting. Or somebody has a bit of a flu, he breaks his fast. Or somebody is a bit, and his sore throat breaks the fast. And this is little hakikatan. A sore throat doesn't in any way, shape or form prevent you from fasting, and is not affected by fasting. Doesn't change whether you fast or not. And so the levels or the types of illnesses that one breaks the fast for, the types of illnesses that one breaks the fast for, it shouldn't be any onset of an illness that is in no way harmful to the individual, because we hear all types of any weird and wonderful reasons why people break the fast. And if somebody breaks out in a rash, or he breaks his fast, in a rash got nothing to do with what you're consuming. But no doubt, if a person has a type of illness that does require for his cure that he consumes, he eats and drinks, then it is permissible to break the fast. إلى الأطباء وإلى الشخص. Exactly, بالضبط. And that one's doctor or medical practitioner will advise accordingly that staying away from using a particular type of medicine in this scenario is going to increase your harm. It's going to make you more ill. It's going to intensify or exacerbate your sickness. Then in that case, he breaks the fast. No. Yeah. Question, is Jannah above the seven heavens, and is anybody from the dunya there? As far as the affair of Jannah being above the seven heavens, then na'am, it is established that Jannah is above the seven heavens. When we speak of the seven heavens, ikhwan, there's oftentimes a confusion between the term as-sama and between paradise or heaven in the English language. Heaven in the English language is a reference to Jannah. But when we have a mention of the sama in the Quran, then the sama is that which is a part of the dunya in essence. That is, the heavens are a part of that which is above us from the created affairs that are lower than Jannah. Jannah is above the seven heavens. The Prophet ﷺ, when he went on Isra and Mi'raj, then he was taken through the seven heavens, and the seven heavens were not Jannah. The Prophet ﷺ would enter a heaven, then he would seek with Jibreel, he would seek permission to enter the following heaven. The custodian of that heaven will asked him who it is. He said Jibreel, and he mentioned that Muhammad ﷺ was with him. He said, Awa qad bu'itha ilay, was he called? Was he sent for? He said yes, and so permission was given, and he would enter that heaven. Then they would continue entering those heavens. And so the heavens that are above us, the heavens that are above us, are heavens. We can only see the lowest heaven, which is sama dunya. So everything that we see above us from universe and stars and galaxies and what have you, then they are all only within one heaven, and that is the lowest heaven. Allah Azza wa Jal has mentioned, وَلَقَدْ زَيَّنَّا السَّمَاءَ الدُّنْيَا بِمَصَابِيحِ, that we have beautified sama ad-dunya. Sama ad-dunya here linguistically a reference to the lowest heaven, because dunya from dana, which is nearness or closeness. And so the sama ad-dunya is referred to as the sama ad-dunya because it is the first heaven that is closest to us, and so it is referred to as such. Allah has placed all of those galaxies and everything that we read about, light years, it is such and such light years, everything that they mention, all of that is that which occurs within the lowest heaven. That is not affirming their statement. The only thing I'm mentioning here is the stars and the galaxies and what have you are all within one heaven. And there are 7 heavens in totality, and Jannah is above those 7 heavens. As far as someone being in Jannah, then now the Prophet ﷺ informed us of the fact that he was shown Jannah, and that within it he saw a man upon a mountain in Jannah with children around him. And so he asked who that was, and the Prophet ﷺ responded that was Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam, and that those who were around him were the children of the believers who had died while still young. And so we have a mention of children, Ibrahim, and the Prophet ﷺ likewise mentioned the souls of the mujahideen, likewise in the bodies of green birds, yani around the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, flying around the throne of Allah Azza wa Jal. So these are texts that indicate the presence of individuals within Jannah. But the scholars, they discuss, are they there in soul and body, or soul alone? And what the majority of the people of knowledge mention is soul alone until the hereafter, when the souls will be rejoined with the bodies. Now, Wallahu ta'ala a'lam, wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.